Hao. My name is Garrick, and welcome back to Taiwan Lao Wai. Yes, I have shorn my gorgeous golden locks off again. I apologize. Look, we're in the middle of summer right now. It regularly crosses 90 degrees Fahrenheit. It is not good for me to be essentially wearing a mop on my head in heat and humidity like this. Don't worry, it will grow back. It always does. As for what we're doing today, we are finally getting back to our Market Meals video series. I know it's been ages since we've done one of those, hasn't it? I get lazy about cooking sometimes. It's easier to eat out at restaurants, especially when they're all so cheap in Taiwan. But it's about time we put a bit more pep in our step and rediscovered the joys of home cooking, I think. So we're heading down to the market, and this time I think we're going to do something with pork belly. If you know Taiwan, you know their primary protein is pork, and the primary cut of that pork is pork belly. It is one of the most commonly eaten foods in Taiwan, in all its different forms. So I figure it's about time to cook some myself. I'll probably pick up a few more things at the market, maybe spices, seasonings, vegetables, fruit, something like that. As always, I'm keen to explore and see what looks delicious, as opposed to going in with a concrete plan. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's have fun. Alright lads, we got ourselves our haul. We ended up spending quite a bit too. I got 200 NTD worth of pork belly. Not sure how much that shakes out to in grams, but we're gonna make ourselves a pretty big batch is what I'm thinking. Also got some scallions and ginger, and oof, if I can heft this up, a big friggin' piece of watermelon. Look at that. Not sure if I've mentioned before, but Taiwan has this variety of enormous light green watermelon. Like, you think you've seen big watermelons before? These things are ovals of mass destruction. But it is watermelon season, so might as well, yeah? I think I've settled on what I want to do to this pork belly as well. I will need to grab a couple other things from the supermarket. So I will grab those, we'll probably get some lunch, and then I will see you around dinner time, when it's time to make some pork.
Many hours later.
Alright, that was a nice rest. Alright, so to cook this pork belly, we are going to be making an approximation of Hong Shao Rou. It's a classic Chinese dish. Essentially, we're going to cut pork belly into small pieces, and then we're gonna simmer it in this sticky, sweet, delicious sauce for about an hour. So by the end, it should ideally be lacquered in this very luscious, red, sticky, unctuous goodness. So quick ingredient check, we got our big slabs of pork belly here. We have very important Shaoxing cooking wine. This is used in a lot of different Chinese dishes, so if you're gonna make a lot of Asian food, go down to your local H-Mart or whatever, grab a bottle of this, keep it on hand. It's pretty much as important as soy sauce in a lot of respects. Speaking of soy sauce, we got some of that too. We got some ginger and scallions for flavor. We have some Chinese 5-spice to approximate the kinds of spices you would put in a traditional Hong Shao Rou. And we got some noodles to put it all on and to soak up all that sauce. We got a lot of work ahead of us. It's probably going to take about an hour and a half to bring this dish to completion. So let's get started. First things first, we gotta get our knife work all done, so we're gonna wash these scallions off. You can tell they have been plucked straight from the ground. These are mundo fresh. Now the nice thing is we do not need to chop these too extensively. These are just going in the sauce to flavor it. So we're gonna take the ends off like so. Boop. And then we're gonna hack these into decent sized pieces, like maybe about this big or so. You know, big enough that they can flavor it essentially like a stock, if you think about it that way. Now I'm using 2 scallions for the amount of pork we have. As with most of my market meals, I do not have a recipe, I do not have precise measurements, so we'll go with the flow and see where it lands us, yeah? Same sort of deal with the ginger. We are not going to use all this ginger in one recipe, but we're going to hack ourselves off a tasteful knob of it like so. Now since we don't want any of that tough ginger skin, we are also going to peel this bad boy and get it nice and clean. I'll admit peeling ginger can be a bit of a pain. The skin is super thick, it breaks on itself easily, it does not accommodate well to your classic fruit or veggie peeler. You just gotta keep at it, you gotta keep slicing away, not slicing, you know what I mean, just keep peeling away till the whole thing is nice and clean. You might get some big chunks like this that the peeler's just not good for, in which case just take your knife, give it a little slice. You'll lose a bit of the flesh, but that's okay as long as it's fully clean. Then once you got all that skin off, we're just going to take the knife and, like the scallions, chop it into pieces, maybe like fat slivers, like so. Because remember, we will be straining this out later, so they need to be big enough for a strainer to catch. Now, ginger can be pretty strong, so while this doesn't look like a lot, I think it'll probably be enough to get us a good flavor without overwhelming the sauce. Alright, so we gave our board a quick wipe down to get all that ginger gunk off of it, which means it's time to tackle this pork. See, we did the veggies first because that's easy to clean off, so now we can do this nonsense and get all our meat juices all on here without worrying about putting something else on it afterwards. So the goal here is simple. We just want to cut this pork belly into decent-sized cubes, bite-sized pieces, I would say. So you're just gonna hack it whatever size you get it in until you get it to the shape you want. Times like this, I wish I had a bigger serrated knife. The only serrated knife I have is pretty small. I feel like it would do a better job cutting through meat this fatty than just the straight chef's knife I currently have. But okay, so we got little slabs now that look kind of like this, and those are pretty fat, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them in half, top and bottom, and then I'm going to slice those into the cube shapes we want. Keep in mind, this all depends on what shape you get your pork belly in. I've got mine from the market in pretty fat stacks, so I do have to play with it a little bit to get it to the shape I want. But just work with what you got, and it'll get you where you need to get got. Make sense? Hope that makes sense. Fun fact that I just discovered today, pork belly in Chinese is Wu Hua Rou, and Wu Hua translates to 5 flowers. So this is essentially 5 flower meat, and I'm not quite sure why that's the translation it is, but I think that's pretty cute. My god, look at how fat this boy is. This boy is fat! So one thing you'll notice as you cut your pork belly is you'll get different distributions of meat to fat in every slice. Because the way pork belly is laid out, you got this luscious top layer of fat here with the meat underneath. And when you cut it into bite-sized cubes, you'll get some chunks that are all meat, some chunks that are all fat, some chunks that have a little of both in different kinds of distributions. Like, look at this. It's almost like we're making bacon here. So again, it all depends on what shape are the cuts of pork belly that you get. But don't worry if the distributions are not the same like this I'm doing here. It is all fat. It is just all fat. Because we're going to braise it all together with itself. It's all going to get nice and juicy and mouth-wateringly tender. Now see this piece I think is a little too big. So you do want to try and keep your pieces roughly the same shape as you go, which is something that I historically struggle with. But that way, they all cook at roughly the same time. You don't get some pieces that are under and some pieces that are over. Now thankfully, braising is a pretty forgiving cooking method, so even if you're a little off, as long as we cook low and slow, it'll all shape out pretty well, I think. Alright, we have finished cutting our pork, and whoa, these pieces are pretty big. I might have wanted to try and slice them a little smaller. But it's fine, it's our first time cooking, we will deal with whatever comes our way. And of course, wash! Do not forget to wash your stuff after it's been coated with sticky meat juice. Do not let that fester! Okay, so now that we're actually ready to start cooking, we're gonna do it in a 3-step process. First we blanch, then we simmer, then we boil. So to start with the blanching, we're gonna need to put some water in this pot, enough to cover the pork. Doesn't have to be completely filled to the brim, but it should be enough to submerge every piece. Now the reason we do this is because there's still quite a lot of impurities in the raw pork, little pockets of blood and scum or whatever. So we are going to boil this, and as it boils, all that scum is going to rise to the top and clear out of the pork. That way, when we actually start cooking, we can be assured of nice, clean, fat slabs of 5-flour meat to work with. As you can see, it's only been a couple minutes, and already the impurities are starting to rise to the surface. Now, don't worry about this cooking the pork. We are not going to cook it all the way. It will still give us plenty of time to braise it to perfection once the gunk's all cleared out. So as the scum rises to the top, just get a spoon, scrape it off, get rid of it. I probably should invest in a proper slotted spoon at this point. It would make this so much easier. My god. You know what? We're gonna try it with the spatula, and already that's working way better. Yes, please, my baby. Right, once you've gotten most of the big chunks of scum off and you're sure no more is boiling up, kill the heat, transfer to a colander or a sieve, and then you're just gonna run cold water all over it, and that should clean the pork off properly and wash off whatever impurities have still been left on the meat itself. This is the most complicated step of the process. Once you're done with this, it's gonna get a lot easier. Right, once you've gotten most of the scum off, you can transfer it back into the big pot. You might want to transfer it back and forth a couple times just to make sure the pork is fully cleaned. Once you're sure all those impurities are taken care of, the blanching step is over, and it's time to get simmering. So, crack open your Shaoxing wine, put a very generous glug in here. This is your main flavor base, so don't be shy. Once you're about halfway up your pork, you want to fill in the rest with water, once again to make sure that it is covered completely. By the end of it, you should have a nice little pool for your pork pieces to lie submerged in. After that, we toss in a couple glugs, maybe a tablespoon or 2 of soy sauce. Traditional Hong Shao Rou uses light and dark soy sauce, but we are faking it a little today. And goes the ginger and scallions, and a generous little dusting of 5-spice powder to get some of those classic Chinese aromas in there as well. We're gonna turn this bad boy up to a boil, and once it starts boiling, we're gonna take it back down to a simmer. And once it starts simmering, we're gonna put a lid on, and we're gonna let it do its thing for just about an hour. Maybe toss in a pinch of salt as well. Obviously, the soy sauce is pretty salty on its own, but a little more can't hurt, you know? Alright, now we can see it is starting to bubble and hiss, so I'm gonna turn it down to low, get it at a nice small simmer. Now we're gonna cover it with a pot lid that's a little bit too small for the pot. We're gonna walk away for an hour, we're gonna come on back. We're gonna see what magic we made. This, incidentally, would be a good time to get all your cleaning out of the way if you have not done so already. Alright, we're gonna let the magic happen for a bit. See you in about 45 minutes or so.
1 hour later.
Right, it's been about 45 minutes. As you can see, the liquid has been reducing quite a bit. We're gonna give it a stir to make sure everything stays well incorporated and everything gets a chance to be under this luscious bath of broth. One problem with this stove is that it is not entirely precise with its heat. It can only hit a few different temperature settings. So I do have to keep watch here and make sure the liquid doesn't reduce too much, or we will be left with some unsauced pork, and that would be a goddamn tragedy. That said, I think we're close enough to done that we can get started on the noodles as well. So we're gonna do that. See, I really got to invest in more deep pots. This wok is the only cooking utensil with the depth I have. My other two are shallow. So probably something to plan for future videos. Gonna come in handy. While that's waiting to boil, we're gonna test one of the pieces of pork and see how tender it's gotten. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's well on its way to where we want it to be. Still a touch gelatinous with the fat, but we still got some more cooking time, so I think that's going to help it render out the way it needs to. Alright, water's boiling, so the nudes are going in. This would probably work better with rice, but noodles are what I have on hand, so noodles are what we're going with. Now while that's going, I think it is about time to move on to the final step for our pork and turn it up to a boil. First though, we need to toss in a generous handful, and I do mean generous, of sugar. So the goal here is we turn this up to a boil with the sugar mixed in, and that's going to make the sugar crystallize and get a little caramelly in the sauce. And that is what's going to make it all sticky and luscious and ooey and gooey and make it stick to these chunks of pork. Not sure how long exactly that's going to take, but we are going to let the sauce reduce with the sugar in it and see how long it takes to get sticky. Now, traditionally, you are supposed to do this with a harder kind of sugar, like rock sugar, which would probably caramelize a bit more effectively than just plain white sugar. But white sugar is what we got, so white sugar is what we're using, and I think it'll still be pretty tasty however it shakes out. Ooh, I love those nice big bubbles it's making. Alright, pasta is done. We're gonna drain this bad boy out so it doesn't overcook. Ski-yoopidoo. Whoa, look at this. Now we're getting somewhere. Now see this as it's reducing down, the color is getting darker and it's getting a bit more of that burnt red look that defines Hong Shao Rou. I don't think it's gonna get like picture perfect. Maybe a couple of the ingredient substitutions we made it less red, but that does look mighty damn tasty. Alright, that sauce is starting to spit now from water and oil mixing, so I think it is time to kill the heat and call this bad boy done. God damn, that looks freaking delicious. Once again, we're gonna try one piece on its own to make sure we want it to be. You can see this one has some fat and some meat on it, so it should give us a good cross-section. I think we nailed it. I think we nailed it first goddamn try. Alright, so it's settling down, it's still sputtering a little bit. You can see all that down here. This is mostly oil, like, this is mostly the oil, the fat of the pork belly itself that rendered off in the cooking process. We pretty much reduced this thing as far as it could possibly go, so now that sauce is clinging to each piece of meat and fat. Good lord. Alright, so we killed the heat, we got our nudes in a bowl. We're gonna spoon ourselves, oop, I kinda burned myself there. We're gonna spoon ourselves a generous helping of this pork deliciousness. Gotta make sure we get a lot of that Shaoxingy pork oil to coat the noodles as well, because that's gonna soak them through with flavor. Alright, now that we've got dinner in hand, I'm gonna try one of the pieces that's pure fat and see how that one shook out. Oh yeah, that's exactly where I want it to be. Still a little toothsome, but it's very yielding. It melts easily with every bite. It's exactly the right level of gelatinous you want pork belly fat to be. It has soaked up all the flavors of that sauce as well. It has just sponged them up. This dish is very savory and it's very fragrant. I can definitely taste the copious amount of Chinese 5 spice I mixed in here. And honestly, I think I kind of nailed the balance. I got the right level of salt, the right level of sweet, the right level of basically everything. Obviously, there are adjustments you can make. You can put different spices into the broth. You can put like whole spices instead of spice powder. But I think, considering this is my first time, I did a ding-dong-dang good job of it. And we got at least enough for 2 more meals after I finish my bowl here, so go me. Alright, I'm gonna call this Hong Shao Rou a success. I highly recommend you try this recipe out yourself. It's very easy to do, not many ingredients. The only consideration is the amount of time it takes to braise and simmer. So, maybe not a weeknight dish, but if you got time on the weekend, definitely try it out. And now I think I'm gonna shut up and eat this delicious dinner I've made for myself. So thank you once again for joining me at Taiwan Lao Wai. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, smash the bell, share with your friends, all that good stuff. Oh, you don't see my chopsticks, they're too fast. And as always, I'll see you next time. 再见. Bye bye.